Is there something wrong?
No, just thinking. As a result of this whole Critic Ranger arc, we're going to have a pretty big change in style. It's hard not to be apprehensive about something like that.
Well, Power Rangers and Super Sentai have had plenty of changes over the years.
Yeah, but eras in Sentai are a bit harder to define. It's always been owned by the same company and has had a lot of the same people working on it from the 70s to present day. Power Rangers, on the other hand, has much more distinct periods. From the Zordon era to the post-Zordon era to the Disney era and even the Neo-Saban era. And now we reach our newest era, the Hasbro era, with their first series, Beast Morphers.
Have an idea for a video, do you?
Yeah, I do. Contrast! Buckler! Ah! How long is it gonna keep doing that?
Until it permanently changes into its new form representing your personal totem. That could be a while. Are you sure you...
Don't worry, I've got it. Contrast! Buckler! Yeah! Let's get started. The first and most iconic era of Power Rangers is the Zordon era. It starts from the very first episode of MMPR and ends with In Space. You could fairly argue the beginning of Zeo as a change in era, but the only thing that really changed was the sets and the suits. Zeo still very much looks and feels like the past 3 seasons of the show. In Space, on the other hand, was a huge departure.
Wasn't the show about to be cancelled?
Oh yes. Turbo had not been received well by fans, and In Space was planned to be the last season. And you can tell that the crew planned to go out with a bang.
They don't seem to be using as much Japanese action footage as previous seasons.
That's because they couldn't. Power Rangers in Space came out in 1998. At this point, the internet wasn't as fast as it is today. Getting footage of shows overseas took a long time, and so while the writers were planning out the next season, they'd only seen a bit of footage from the newest Sentai series, Mega Ranger, and that was of the giant robot which would become known in the States as the Astro Megazord. And so they assumed Mega Ranger was about space travel.
Mega Ranger isn't about space at all. That's just the mecha. The power theme of the suits is technology, and with the main characters being in high school, its overall tone is more of a high school drama. The majority of the show is set on Earth.
And this posed a problem for the crew of In Space. Pretty much all the parts set in space required using original footage. But it worked, creating the best-looking Power Rangers season anyone had ever seen. It was also the first time that a season of the show had an overarching story. The series finale, Countdown to Destruction, is still one of the best endings a season of Power Rangers ever got, and is honestly a better anniversary episode than either Dimensions in Danger or the Legendary War. To save the universe, the great sage Zordon sacrifices himself to rid the universe of its greatest evil. This made sure that there were no loose ends. It was a perfect ending and exactly what the brand needed. The success of In Space stopped Fox from canceling the show and ushered in a new era, which we are going to call the post-Zordon era. As a result of In Space's success, we saw a drastic change in the show's leadership. These people would become the architects of this era of the show. The name Judd Lin is very well known in the Power Rangers fandom. He is credited with writing 37 episodes of In Space, on top of being a co-producer. He would continue being a producer and a writer for the show up until Time Force. He would return as a writer and producer for RPM, but we'll talk about that another time.
Another name that fans of the series should be familiar with is Koichi Sakamoto. Koichi was born in Japan and started his career with tokusatsu as a stunt actor for Masked Man Blue in live shows of Hikari Sentai Masked Man. In 1989, he came to the United States as a student to learn English and become a stunt actor. Eventually, he found his way to Saban, where he became the stunt director for Season 3 of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Since they were still using the Jew Ranger and Kiba Ranger suits, all of the on-ground fight footage in the 3rd season had to be original footage, and it wasn't good.
I would argue that they did the best they could with the budget and resources available to them. His first directing role was for the Zeo two-parter King for a Day.
Damn, that episode is considered by a lot of fans to be one of Zio's best.
He directed several episodes of In Space, including Always a Chance, the one where Adam comes back for the first time as the MMPR Black Ranger.
I love that episode. It did a really good job of showcasing a Ranger alumni while still progressing a character arc for a current Ranger.
In addition to directing 5 episodes, he also helped complete the storyboard for In Space's 2-part finale, Countdown to Destruction. Koichi is pretty much the go-to guy for directing crossover episodes or films now. He's directed crossover movies for Kamen Rider as well as Super Sentai, including the Dinosaur Sentai movie crossover that also included the Go Busters.
There are a number of problems with that movie, but the action choreography was really solid. Hey, looks like he also directed the Legendary War for Super Megaforce. Again, there are a lot of issues with how that episode went down, but the action sequences wasn't one of them.
After In Space, Koichi became a producer for the series and continued working as an action coordinator. The 2 series he had the most involvement in as a director are Time Force and Wild Force. He directed 18 episodes for Time Force, including the 2-part opening and the 3-part finale, and 20 episodes of Wild Force.
Damn! I've never seen those shows, but a lot of fans consistently heap praise on those 2 seasons. I'll go ahead and take a look at Wild Force. Wild Force is an interesting season, partly because while it started production after Disney bought the license, pre-production had started before the buyout. And so, the company still had a contract with Fox, which resulted in the first half of Wild Force being aired on Fox Kids, with the second half airing on ABC Kids. So, even though Wild Force can be technically considered the first series of the Disney era, many fans, including myself, classify it as the last season of the post-Zordon era. Alright, time to pop in the DVD and get a better feel for this series. Huh. Well, that was interesting. On the surface, this season is more or less what you would expect from Power Rangers. The story is pretty basic and straightforward, and the characters are distinct but pretty one-dimensional.
So, it's boring?
No, not at all. It's just pretty average, at least on a writing level. Okay, so spoiler warning. I'm assuming that most of you watching this have already seen Wild Force, or have read a plot synopsis of it, but in case you haven't, here's your spoiler warning. I do like Master Org's backstory and the fact that he has a previous relationship with the Red Ranger. He killed Cole's parents because he was in love with his mother and felt betrayed when she married Cole's father. And one of the reasons he wants to kill Cole is because he sees Cole as a living embodiment of his suffering. That's pretty dark, but
It doesn't really mean much in the overall narrative. Cole doesn't change as a character and remains more or less the same after Master Org reveals what happened to his parents. And the 2 of them never have another conversation about them ever again.
unfortunately, Cole's backstory is the most detailed of the main cast, and everyone else's spotlight episodes, while fun and charming, don't really advance them as characters so much as solidify that they're already awesome the way they are. There's nothing wrong with that, but it does end up with bland characterization. The Black Ranger, Danny Delgado, is my favorite. I just love that the big iron bison is a soft-spoken dork who likes flowers.
That's them. Nice teddy bear.
My favorite characters in this season were the 2 villain sidekicks, Toxica and Jindrax. I just love how their friendship grows, and their heart-to-heart moments are a lot more memorable to me than the heart-to-heart moments the Rangers get in their spotlight episodes.
Hey, are you alright?
Mandalok was right. I am worthless.
Oh, Jindrax, come on. Hey, listen. You are not worthless. You were very brave to eat those beans and fight with your brother. I'm proud of you.
Really, Toxica?
Yes.
Well then, I will carry on Team Carnival. Yeah. Juggalo would have wanted it that way. And besides, I have my best friend to help me, right?
You know it, Gendrax. We're a team. Come on, let's go.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a dud as a final season.
On a writing level, yes. But on the spectacle level, it's one of the best seasons of Power Rangers I've ever seen. I'm not going to talk about the aesthetics of the suits or the Zords, since that all comes from Gal Ranger, and I'll probably talk about Gal Ranger in a future episode. In this video, I'm more concerned with the American-filmed fight footage. And that footage is some of the best I've ever seen in the show. Koichi Sakamoto was a huge Jackie Chan fan, and it shows in his choreography. Wild Force is a long way from MMPR fight scenes, which, while they had some creative choreography, weren't at all on the same level as other television action shows, but some of the stunts done in Wild Force are insanely well done.
Some of these fights are cooler than the Japanese footage.
I know! It's not a surprise that since 2010, Koichi Sakamoto has been directing most of the big-budget Super Sentai and Kamen Rider movies. The guy knows how to make expensive-looking action sequences on a budget. My favorite story in this season is the two-part crossover with Time Force. In Japan, it's been customary since Kaku Ranger vs. O Ranger to have an annual team-up versus movie. There was no Gao Ranger vs. Time Ranger movie, which meant that the Time Force team-up episode was entirely American footage.
And we saw how that turned out in Season 3 of MMPR.
But just look at some of these sequences.
That is impressive.
Yeah, this is genuinely good. Not good for Power Rangers, but just good. Damn good, even. It shouldn't have been a good crossover, but a lot of time and care was obviously put into it, and it's now one of my favorite episodes of the show as a whole. The thing is, Wild Force shouldn't have worked at all as a season. There was a lot of things happening behind the scenes, and a lot of things that needed to be, and it's really surprising that it turned out as good as it did. I mentioned earlier about Disney's acquisition of Power Rangers. Well, this means that Wild Force had to be rushed in production because Disney was going to cut their budget, and they needed it finished before that happened. On top of that, Wild Force was the 10-year anniversary season, and they had to do something with that. And Koichi and his crew hit that one out of the park as well. Forever Red isn't as good as Reinforcements from the Future, but it's still the gold standard for the big anniversary team-ups.
For Power Rangers, anyway, Sentai is consistently better at crossovers since they put more money into making higher quality films and seasons and plot and relevance and
That is a video for another time. The other thing that I find interesting about Wild Force is how seamlessly it blends the American and Japanese footage. Maybe this was the standard for this era, but for the Zordon era, even in space, it's a little jarring to watch as an adult because it is painfully obvious when you are watching Japanese footage versus American. In Wild Force, it was honestly hard to tell the difference sometimes.
That may have been, in part, due to Taro Sakamoto.
Who's that?
A veteran Sentai director who directed episodes from way back in Chojin Sentai Jetman, the Sentai previous to Zyuranger, and even directed 8 episodes of Gokaiger. He also directed the Aba Ranger vs. Deca Ranger movie and the Car Ranger vs. O Ranger movie.
I love that movie. Everything in it is just so weird and...
Great for a future video.
Right. Yes.
Taro Sakamoto was the series director for Gao Ranger, the Sentai Wild Force was adapted from, and he directed 12 episodes of Wild Force.
If Koichi directed 20 episodes and Taro directed 12... that's 32 out of 40 episodes directed by 2 people. That's insane.
Whereas Koichi specialized in Hong Kong martial arts style action sequences, Taro's episodes seemed to be more atmospheric. Like Koichi, he was also really good at shooting his scenes so that they would combine well with the Japanese footage.
Did he work on any other series of Power Rangers?
No. Wild Force is his only directing credit with Power Rangers.
Koichi Sakamoto, on the other hand, would stay with the show much longer. Unfortunately, that can't be said for most of the crew that worked on the show during this era. The Disney buyout changed everything. The biggest change was that filming was moved to New Zealand from California. This meant that a lot of the crew got laid off. Koichi was one of the few that was kept. He directed a couple of episodes of Ninja Storm, but during the Disney era, his main role was as an executive producer. Koichi Sakamoto helped define two big important eras of the show. And even though he doesn't have as strong of an influence as he used to, he still worked as an action director for Samurai and directed the previously mentioned 20th anniversary special Legendary War. Koichi Sakamoto helped transition the fight scenes in Power Rangers from looking like something you'd see on a stage show to cinematic and epic. If your favorite seasons of Power Rangers are the period from Lost Galaxy to Wild Force or even Ninja Storm to RPM, Koichi Sakamoto was a key figure in giving you those memories and deserves to be talked about as much as Judd Lind, Jackie Marchand, or even the original series cast. Something's wrong. I feel strange. What's happening to... What the hell is it doing?
It's finally taking its final form.
I know this symbol. The 1993 American Dragon Zord toy came with an 8-inch Green Ranger figure. On the chest of the Green Ranger figure was this weird Godzilla face thing, instead of the footprint that was used on the actual Power Coin in both Zyuranger and Power Rangers. This weird Godzilla face was how the Dragon Zord was marketed in America. This symbol hasn't been used with official merchandise in years. Well, you can still buy shirts and shot glasses with it, but that's it.
It's something created in America to help sell a Japanese product. I think it's appropriate as a personal totem.
Yeah, represents this show fairly well. Change is scary, and what's lost with change can be sad, but there can be a lot gained too. It's depressing to think about all the voice actors and crew that gave their hearts and souls to produce entertainment for children that were then suddenly laid off just because there was a new boss. But that's just how life is sometimes. And while the post-Zordon era is remembered by many fans as the most creative and engaging era of Power Rangers, there are a lot of fans who fondly remember seasons like Ninja Storm and Dino Thunder from the Disney era. And as reviled as the Nielzabub era is from adult fans, I remember seeing a lot of kids in the daycare programs I used to work at come in with Samurai toys. They really loved it, and will probably carry fond memories of that season into their own adulthood.
How do you feel about Hasbro taking over?
I'm fine with it. I really loved Transformers Prime, and My Little Pony Friendship is Magic is going to be a pop culture touchstone for years to come. So, yes, I'm excited to see what the future holds.
What's on your mind?
It's just, when I started this show, part of the reason I called it Lost in Translation was because I planned on talking about adaptations in general. The first video I did about Power Rangers and Zyuranger was the only one I really thought I'd do on the subject. Yeah, I had a feeling I would do more comparisons between Power Rangers and Super Sentai down the road, but everything changed after the Halloween episode. I realized just how much I enjoyed talking about this. I still want to eventually talk about adaptations other than Sentai and Power Rangers, but I'm okay with what the show has become. But the name Lost in Translation just doesn't feel right anymore.
A little generic and too straightforward. Stop worrying and just roll with it. Go with your feelings and see where they take you. If you don't like the result, you can always try something different again or go back to the way things were. But do what's right for you.
Yeah, you're right. It's time for a transformation sequence. I am the cerebrally comical Contrast Ranger. Contrast Green!
You have no idea where we are or how to get home, do you?
Not at all.
Kumad! We need an Uber.
Special thanks to everyone who stuck with us. Remember, may the power protect you.
You need to turn on location. Yes, then people will find us. They need to find us. We don't know where we are. Well, I don't want to pay for a ride either, but we're out of options. Do you have any friends that can lend us a hand? Maybe an owl that can turn into a jetpack, or some kind of motorcycle raccoon creature.